Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now we've got another retro review. I've actually got an Acoustic Research EB101, which I've got to say is probably one of my favourite turntables, sort of mid 80s, sort of early 90s. And when it came out, I didn't have very high hopes for it at all, because you may remember, or whether you do remember or not, that Acoustic Research also had a turntable around that era called the Legend, which was a beautiful looking thing. It had sort of soft-edged, curved, sort of rounded off plinth, rounded off platter, very shapely sort of rounded off lid on it. Looked gorgeous, sort of almost like folded veneer on the corners and everything. It was really good looking deck, but it just didn't sound that great really. It was okay. It wasn't, I mean, it wasn't awful, but it was, sonically it was expensive for what it sounded like. It looked value for money, but it didn't sound value for money. And I was never totally into it. I sort of, you know, we used to have them in the shop and they used to sell on looks usually. But it wasn't as good as, you know, things like the System Deck and whatever else at that sort of money at the same time. The Manticore Mantra, which I reviewed yesterday, in fact, was a better turntable really. So when Acoustic Research announced, I always remember the guy in the road, Steve Ward, Acoustic Research. Anybody who's been in the industry back then remembers Steve Ward. What a character, yeah. Brought this up for us to have a go at, and I was like, well, you know, I can't see this being. In spite of the fact I've always been very into Acoustic Research, because obviously Acoustic Research are really well known for the speakers, and AR18, AR18Ss, AR8s, the old AR3s and the 9s, the bigger stuff like the 48s and 38s and whatever. Fantastic, really good speakers, paper cone drivers, all designed by Roy Allison, who ended up being Allison speakers. That same very natural sort of open sounding speakers. Saying that, they did have quite a good heritage, because the original AR turntable, the ARXA, that was designed by a guy called Edgar Villchar in about 1960-61 sort of time. And I get the impression about Edgar Villchar that he was more of an engineer than he was an audiophile, because if you read articles that he's written or articles about him, the ARXA, which was a superb turntable actually, it undercut all its rivals and was better than its rivals at the time. But as an engineer, he sort of understood the importance of having a rigid connection in some situations and a suspension in other situations, and things that shouldn't really interact with other things. The way he talks about his design of the turntable, he's got it spot on. And I'm pretty sure, was the original designer of the 3-point mount suspended subchassis turntable. I mean, you'll hear arguments that Lynn, because the Sondek is obviously a 3-point suspended subchassis, that Lynn stole it from Thorens, or they stole it from Ariston. It was already there in the ARXA. Whether or not Thorens beat them to it, I'm not sure. I think the TD150, which I think was their first suspended deck, was predated by because I think that was about 64, 65, and the earliest Thorens that I can remember, the TD124, that was an idler wheel, so I doubt that wouldn't have been a subchassis the same. It would have been probably suspended, but perhaps on 4 springs. I can't remember, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure, and I've heard people say, that the Acoustic Research got there first. When you hear him talk though, it's almost as though he talks from an engineer's point of view, and he's very critical of this sort of audiophile world, and people have said that record players are the most important part of a hi-fi system. That's rubbish. And there's one I read the other day. He said that a hi-fi reviewer had said that the AR turntable had a wonderful soundstage, and his response to that was, if somebody asked me to make a record player with a wonderful soundstage, I wouldn't know where to start. But saying that, when you actually listen to his description and the importance he puts on isolation and keeping this part from that part and not letting the motor noise get to here and all this sort of thing, that's the reason you would have a good soundstage, because I think he was sort of imagining that the reviewers were saying that the turntable created this soundstage. That isn't what goes on. What happens is, you've got a record, everything's on the record, the soundstage is on the record, all the fine detail is on the record, but all the noise and the sort of whatever going on with the record player can cloud all that out, and it can hide a soundstage, it can hide fine detail. And his record player was so well isolated that you could hear all this fine detail, and that was what was going on, but he was very, very negative about it. You know, I can't make a turntable do that. So it's quite interesting, you tend to get this, people who are particularly good engineers sometimes don't actually get the audiophile thing at all. It's quite interesting, some of the articles. It's worth Googling them and reading them. But anyway, the original XA was a superb turntable. Then we had the Legend, which was a bit disappointing. And then we get the cheaper, the sort of cut price Legend in the EB101. So I didn't have high hopes. But the first time I heard it, I remember because it was AR tone arm with a glance cartridge. It came as standard with a glance cartridge. I can remember it was orange, but I can't remember the model number of it. And it was amazing. It was, I thought, substantially better than the Legend, even though it was about 2/3 the price. It was barely more expensive than the Riga 3, and it was quite a bit better than the Riga 3 at the time. It was easily as good as a system deck. Probably sort of around Manticore Mantra sort of thing, but it was cheaper. I mean, it wasn't as pretty or as expensive looking as a Legend, but it was okay, really. It's got, it's like a vinyl wrap over chipboard. The suspension, which, like the Manticore Mantra I'll show you in a second, the suspension is really good. It's really, really balanced and really, really free. I should imagine, I don't read comments, I should imagine when I said this about the Manticore Mantra the other day, a lot of turntables tend to be a little bit wobbly and a little bit stiff in certain areas, whatever. I know that if you set them up right, you can make them so they are nice and free. But what I was kind of saying was, that Manticore yesterday and this AR here, 35 years old, never been touched. The suspension is absolutely spot on. There's very few decks that will be like that without some attention, and this hasn't had attention, and the Manticore hadn't had attention, and they were spot on. So it says something about the design of the subchassis and the spring configuration and everything, that they will stay like that. Some decks don't stay lined up very well. Michel Jarre decks don't. There's quite a few of them that don't stay set up very well. Anyway, back to the EB101. What I'll do, I'll show you around it with, let's get a close up on it and show you what's underneath. I'm trying to think what else to say about it, really. Yeah, let's move the camera. Let's have a look. So, Acoustic Research EB101. I mean, like I say, one of my favourite decks of the sort of era. When I say favourite, I mean favourite as in value for money, really. I mean, it wasn't the best deck of the year. It was just unusually good for the money, really. I think that's why I liked it so much. Must have sold loads of them over the years, really. It's quite a conventional looking deck, really. If you compare it to the Legend was very, very distinctive with its curved edges and everything. But this is much more in the sort of vein of like a Sansui 222 or a Thorens or whatever. It's got that sort of very squared off sort of look about it, very functional. This one's got the AR arm on it. I seem to remember in the brochure, and it's just funny, it's literally just come into my mind now. I think in the brochure that they claimed that you could fit different arm boards to this and fit different arms. There isn't really space. If you look down the bottom of there, I can't see, because the distance, this distance is different with different tone arms. Like Lin and Riga, must be 3/4 of an inch difference. So there isn't really space to sort of fit a different arm, different effective length arm board in there, really. So I think all I ever remember is selling them with Acoustic Research tone arms on, and it was a decent tone arm from what I remember anyway. So the glance cartridge has gone on this one. This has actually now got an Autophone MC10, which is an interesting choice actually, but moving coil on this, but that probably works all right. I can't not knocking it. So yeah, there you go. I'll just take the platter off and let's have a look underneath. So underneath we've got a fairly large sort of machined sub platter. If you look underneath of the platter as well, that's all sort of machined out. I think whether this is some sort of Mazak or it's some sort of alloy. Could be Mazak. Feels a bit light to be Mazak, to be honest. But yeah, fairly dead actually. It is fairly dead. Quite a chunky motor and pulley mounted on this little platform on here. So yeah, two-stage pulley, usual sort of thing.
So yeah, like I say, impressively engineered, and it wasn't an expensive deck. It was barely more expensive than a Riga 3 when it came out. I can't quite fathom how they used to manufacture them at price, really. Considering it was an imported deck, and you usually pay over the odds for imports. Anyway, let's put it all back together. So yeah, I hope you like this one. EB101, I haven't seen them for a long, long time. Really pleased to have this one in, actually. It's been brought back a few memories, really. And it does sound good. It's still got that sort of punchy, clear sound to it, really, even after all this time. So yeah, I don't think, it may not have had a lot of use, this one. I'm getting the impression it's not had a lot of use. So it feels very, very fresh. Everything works really well, and it's, you know, in nice condition. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Sorry about the camera pointing into the sun in the window. That wasn't a good choice, was it? Thanks for all the likes, and don't forget to subscribe. I shall see you in a future video. I'll be doing some more sort of new product reviews next. I've got two different products to do. So later this week, hopefully, if things are fairly quiet, I'll get those done. See you soon. Thank you.